guys, we are on page 36 of our journal. Yesterday we added vocabulary to page 35, so hopefully you got that done. If you have not turned in your vocab or your homework assignment from yesterday, that needs to be taken care of right now, so go ahead and pause this video and go back and make sure you've turned both of those in. Alright, so there's going to be a little bit of graphing on here, so if you have your graph paper, you want to go ahead and get graph paper, and you're probably going to need a ruler for at least a couple of it. So ruler, graph paper, and a pencil. If you need a pause to go take care of getting those, then please do that. If not, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be learning to draw a trend line. So we're going to do step 1. Step 1 to writing an equation for a trend line. Sorry, that's what we're going to title this. Writing an equation for a trend line. Sorry, trend line's 2 words, and I always put it together as one. But I teach math for a reason, so just forgive me. Alright, step 1. We are going to draw a trend line. So, of course, if we want to know the equation for a trend line, we need to draw the trend line on the scatter plot. So we're going to draw the trend line. Step 2, of course, if I'm going too fast, you know you can always just pause at any point and get it down. Step 2 is to calculate the slope. And we're going to put that the slope, just to remind ourselves, is our m. Alright, so we're looking at a scatter plot. So here's an example of a scatter plot. This is the one we're actually going to be doing. So on the scatter plot, we're going to draw the trend line, and then we're going to calculate the slope. So we need to remind ourselves, how do we find the slope? And we're going to look at that in just a minute, remind ourselves. Step 3, we're going to calculate the y-intercept, which is our b. Alright, so those are 3 steps to doing it. So what I want you to do is I'm going to put up a scatter plot. And if you are a virtual person who is temporarily virtual, as in you'll be coming back in the next week or 2, you don't have to worry about drawing this. You can get a copy of it from me when you come back. You'll just need to remember to do that. But if you aren't, then you need to get out that graph paper and you need to draw this scatter plot. So I need you to go ahead and pause the video and draw that scatter plot. And yes, I know that's going to be a lot of work. I apologize. I don't know how else to get around it. So go ahead and pause the video and push play when you have it done. Alright, so by now you should have that scatter plot drawn. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at that scatter plot. And we're going to actually do our 3 steps. Okay? So our step 1 was to draw the trend line. So what we're going to do for that is we are going to remember trend lines are straight. And the same number of points above and below. And we have the same number of points above and below. Alright, so on our scatter plot, we're going to be using our ruler. Oh, I am so sorry, I'm zoomed in. I completely forgot I was zoomed in. So I'll give you a couple minutes to get that written down. And go ahead and draw your trend line. So get that written down and draw your trend line. I'm going to work on my trend line. Alright, if you need more time, pause the video. So there's my trend line. You can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 below, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 above, and 1 that kind of goes through it. Your line might be slightly different. That's okay. We also need to make a point that we ignore outliers. Remember, an outlier is a point that stands out differently. We don't have any outliers there, so we don't have anything we really need to ignore. All right, our next step is to calculate the slope. So what we're going to do is we have a graph, so we're going to do rise over run. So find 2 points that go through corners. So we're going to look for 2 points that go through corners. And it might be hard, or I don't know, mine's pretty decent. But I want to find the best points that go through corners. And I'm going to say that one goes through a corner. And oh, my line's definitely not perfect. Just for purposes, we'll say that one, and it's not going to be perfect. So my rise went up 2 and over 2, which means I had a slope of not up 2 over 2. I'm so sorry. All right, so if I look, it went up 2 lines, but it went up 100, 200, because these are going by hundreds, so it went up 200, and it ran, these are going by tens, 10, 20. So this is going to simplify to 10. So my slope is 10. Yours might be slightly different because you might have found a little bit different line. And honestly, that line's not got a perfect slope of, but we're going to use that. And then calculate y-intercept. We're actually going to look for the y-intercept. Our y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So for me, I'm going to come here, and mine's slightly above. So this is 100, so I'm going to say maybe 20. So I'm going to say my y-intercept is 20. So my equation I came up for this line is mx, so we have y equals mx plus b, and I'll plug in my m, which is 10, and my b is 20. All right. Give you a couple seconds to get that down, then we're going to move to the left side of page 36. If you need more time, go ahead and pause this video. So let's go to the left, and this one we're going to look at some examples of how it may show up on testing. And so how we're going to draw this for our journal is we're going to put the best scatter plot for y equals 1/2 x plus 2. And then we're going to draw these 4. So I'm going to do A and B and do backwards L's because we were only looking at one quadrant for these. And we're not going to draw them perfectly because we actually don't need them perfectly for this problem. Alright, so this one, we're going to start, and they're going to go in a positive direction. So do some dots going in a positive direction. And I'm going to put that this line right here, where my first dot is 3. And the first dot going this way was about a 2. And we really only need that point for this. For B, we're going to go kind of in the middle, and we're going to go horizontally. And I'm going to put that this, where the kind of the middle of this is going to be 4.5. And my first point is going to be a little bit before the 1. So my point's going to be a little bit before the 1, and they're all going to kind of center around that 4.5. All right, so for C, we're going to start up high, and we're going to go downwards. And that first point is going right below the first point. We're going to put a 7. And right after that first point, we're going to put a 1. So I'm just giving you about where 1 point's going to be, kind of a little bit of a reference. And then our last one is also going to be a negative. It's going to be a little bit more spread out, but it is also going to go in a negative direction. And our first point is going to be right before the 1. And our first point is going to be right below the 9. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute to get this done, if you need to. Okay, if you need some more time, just go ahead and pause the video now. So we're going to be looking at y equals 1/2. So first of all, I want to notice this 1/2 is positive. The only one that was a positive slope was A, but I want to look at it a little bit more depth than that. Though A is correct because it was the only positive slope, I want to draw my trend lines on these. And so you can freehand them since we kind of freehanded these. That's going to be about 1. If you are horrible at freehanding, then please get out that ruler, but I'm just drawing really quickly, kind of gist of it because these aren't perfect. And this 2 is my y-intercept. So maybe looking, where does it cross at the y? And this crossed at 4.5. This crossed about 8. This crossed way above it, and this is the only one that crossed there. And so my y-intercept gave it away. I also could have looked at if this was about a 2, it rose 1, ran 2, and so A is correct. Okay, let's look at one more. And so we're going to have a graph, just one graph, so no worries here. And we're going to label this at 1, and we're going to label this at 230. And then the next line I'm going to do at 260. So my first dot is going to be between the 230 and the 260 above the 1. And my next dot's going to be about the 260 and just a little bit over. And then the rest of them are going to just kind of go up from there. And this down here is year. And this over here is population. And so it asked which of these matches the equation. So we're going to write down these first. We're going to write down 4 equations. And actually I wrote that down wrong. It should be A, C, and then B, D. So A is y equals 5x plus 236. C is y equals 1/5 x plus 236. And as you can imagine, this is easier when you actually have the paper. But I have none of you have asked to get copies of this. So I feel pretty confident that you have found a way. All right, so there are 4 equations. If you need a minute to write them down, go ahead and take that. So always pause if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and draw loosely my line. And we can see that it crosses about 236, which they all have that, so that's good. But these two are negative, and I want to follow this line. Now I can see that it's going up. So B and D are wrong because those are negative. So now I need to look at this. So this second point was about at the 2. So I need to determine what this is. And it looks about halfway through. So I'm going to say it's about 245. So we are going up from 245 to 260. So I am rising 15 and running I got 1. And so it doesn't really match either of ours because that slope would be a 15. But it's definitely not C because it's not going to be 1/5. And so I'm guessing I'm somehow, oh, I can see what I did wrong. The numbers should have been a little bit more closer, these dots. So A is right. So I'm sorry. If you look on the graph, which I'll show you the real graph, you can see that this is about 245, and this one's about 260. And so it went up 15 and over 3, and so that kind of is where that comes from. All right, sorry, I know it's really hard without the graphs. I do apologize. I don't really know what other way to do this. But if you have questions, please send them my way. Again, you should have yesterday turned in vocabulary 10, and that should have been turned in through Teams. And then you should have also turned in the homework. And there's a part of that homework, if you couldn't figure out how to do dots on Teams on your Word document, that you should be sending me a picture of that part. All right. If you have any questions, send them my way.